Hello Internet, and welcome to Politically Non-Binary. I'm Jackie Fox, and thank you for joining me today. In this video, we're going to be talking about the small internet and how it solves some of the big web's biggest problems in 2024, but also how you can access this unique and almost retro, maybe nostalgic slice of the internet for some of us. A few years ago, at the end of a three-part series that I was doing on sex work and social media, I commented that there should be a way of socializing social media, and that there were independent group-based projects that were working towards that. And in the years following, we would see some of those become popular. In particular, a lot of people tried to move over to Mastodon when Elon Musk bought Twitter, though ultimately it would be newcomer Blue Sky that would pick up most of that traffic. But ultimately, the major behemoths never really fell. It's just the people who were disgruntled by the changes moved to different platforms. Instagram, TikTok became more popular. It's not that we ever reverted to a previous way of being. Instead, Web 2.0 has continued. Even though many have told us that Web 3.0 was going to take over, it never really has. This would be the blockchain-based web, which is an absolute nightmare. But it's been a long time since Web 1.0. So long that many of you probably don't understand what the distinction between the two is. Web 1.0 is the internet as it existed when I was young. I don't have that many big memories of it. Navigating could be a bit of a nightmare, especially if you didn't know what websites to go to get suggestions on where to look. But when you did find those magical websites and they pointed you all over this vast wide web, it would reach some of the most beautiful, interesting, and utterly niche projects known to man, and it was a truly fascinating time to be browsing the web. A big part of the dead internet theory is not just that bots control the internet. That's a pretty extreme take in some people's minds. Instead, it's that bots maintain a high presence on these corporate sites, but ultimately, it's only these corporate sites and their prevalence of bots, but also the existence of certain types of censorship or different platforms disallowing different types of speech or forcing people into strange and new dialects to describe basic points of human life because the algorithm doesn't like it when you say a certain word, not even a particularly foul one, but just one that relates to an experience that everyone is going to have at some point in their life. Literally, all of us. And that's a little strange, and the small web seeks to solve this problem. So what is the small web? Well, since the shift to Web 2.0, basically everything has been app-driven, to the point where a lot of apps may have a website, but it may not even have functionality, or it may prompt you to get a desktop version of their app. Everything is running through this application framework. There are no longer just websites. Like, the barrier to entry, really, to get people's attention these days on the internet is to have an app or have a presence on one. Building a presence outside of that isn't seen as a thing that you do. You go to the platform to get the engagement, to get the people. But Web 1.0, which didn't have apps, it had websites, platforms for sure, but these tended to branch off pretty heavily and kind of evolve into their own things. Like, there was a big difference between MySpace and Facebook. And for anyone who was alive during that transition and made that transition, it's something I think about every 2 or 3 years. Like, what if I had never left MySpace? What if many of us hadn't? We'd all know how to code by now, for one, just from designing our MySpace profiles. I mean, we at least have HTML and CSS competence, if nothing else. What if the internet had stayed like that? Instead of giving us sterilized blue and white environments like Facebook ultimately would, we had a place where we could really show whatever we wanted. Anything we could dream up into existence through code could usually be displayed on your MySpace website. And it was like that. It wasn't a page. It wasn't a page in someone else's Facebook. It was a full MySpace website for yourself. And there were many ways that this could manifest, and because of the creative possibilities, I mean, these could be almost infinitely different from each other. It was truly a magical way to learn to express oneself on the internet in a way that has been so user experience streamlined to the point where you can't express yourself beyond the post. You know what I mean? There is no way to customize who you are, really, in the same way that we had then. And the small web solves this problem through a number of hosting sites, which I'll talk more about later, but also things like RSS feeds and also web rings and other various mechanisms for small and intimate and still actively online communities that, for whatever reason, want to avoid the corporate web and instead stick to something a bit more on the fringes. The small web is absolutely the place to be. And this really triggers a lot of nostalgia for me. If you are a person who is scared by the dead internet theory, then this is at most its antithesis, as I believe is possible. This could be how we retake the internet. And search engines, major search engines, which effectively hide this from us by creating a dark forest in front of us between us and this content written by hyper-passionate people about very specific topics or trying to do very specific things. But in the same way, tools like RSS feeds, web rings, and multiple different facets of the personal website as well, and their ability to link to each other. A lot of these allow you to fully customize and control a new internet ecosystem that you are building yourself from the ground up. Tom Anderson. It's sad that he just took his money and ran like any sane person would instead of sticking around like Zuckerberg and Elon Musk. But Tom Anderson really gave us access to the means of production online in a way that I don't think anyone else ever quite has. And we didn't appreciate that at the time, not for what it was. And the small web allows us to take that back.
Many people still want to have an online presence, identity, and persona, but don't want to deal with all the privacy, spyware, manipulative, forced fake crap on social media apps. But what about before social media apps? Before social media apps, there were websites, forums, blogs, and RSS feeds. They still exist, and they are sort of getting a mini revival of all the current social media mess. The idea is called the personal web, or web revival, or the small web. It's called a lot of different things. So I created a map for it. In part 1, we're going to just go through the basics, and in part 2, I'm going to actually go through on how to set it up, and then you can decide whether you care or not. Everyone complains about social media algorithms, right? This half-baked AI algorithm that controls your brains and manipulates you to control your ego, to support a corporation that is harming society and harming people to sell more products. But with RSS feeds, you can get the content without the algorithm. Web rings usually consist of a group or a club of people that have their own websites. They can be good if they are part of an active community. I've talked about forums in another video, but they are kind of part of the personal web because they're on websites, not on apps, and I do like them and like their medium. Messaging. Okay, messaging needs more work, and the messaging technology, more protocols are being built, the technology is slowly getting better, but it needs more work. Internet relay chats, I do really like. It's anonymous, you can build it into your website, it's really, really cool. So I've outlined some principles for the personal web to generally make it better and stir things in the right direction. I would take this seriously, but then again, I wouldn't. A lot of people have written things very similar to this and so forth. So there are two types of people that build personal websites. There is the person that puts a website up and never updates it again, and then there's the person that continually updates it every now and then. If I search anything on Google, I will get corporate, SEO, AI, over-bloated garbage that I don't want to see. But I can use a different, better search engine instead, like Marginalia. If I search mushrooms on Marginalia, I can filter it by popular, small web, blogs, academia, vintage, wikis, forums, docs, recipes. And I find this so much better for finding good websites. I can use it for so many different things, so many different topics that when I originally used Google, I would get so much garbage. But with this, I can actually get cool sites that I like, that I enjoy, that I'll enjoy reading.
The last couple of clips were from YouTuber Sci-School. Sci-School? Oh, like high school. Okay, cool. I don't know exactly how I feel about this guy's channel because there's something about his tone that's a little odd to me that I've heard. It just feels a little bit like a red flag, but at the same time, I've watched 3 of his videos. One of them quoted Zizek. One of them has been largely about Serial Experiments Lane, and the third one is the one about personal website building and how to find other people's personal websites as well. Personal website searching, which may be even more important here, in that this is really the tool that allows you to explore this kind of dark web sort of structure of people who are still making personal websites in 2024. So that's definitely something for you to check out. There'll be a link to that in the description. One thing that I want to personally point out is there are a variety of websites here linked as kind of in the same way, like a site that you don't have to update regularly, like a all-in-one site. Kind of like the way that I use Linktree, but maybe a little bit more customizable than that, because that is kind of narrow in form in a lot of ways. My Linktree down in the description is going to give you links to my podcast, my YouTube channels, my books, and ways that you can donate to the channel, other projects as well. It is the complete guide to the Jackie Fox Media Empire, and it's websites like these that are really important. And I've been an adopter of this for a long time because, since I've kind of decided that for a lot of reasons I should diversify my online presence, I've also found it more and more important to have a one-size-fits-all link that can guide people to every part of that and also show them, where my books are, etc. Because, oh my God, Amazon does not make that easy for me. So if you appreciate that type of thing or think you could use more of that, there's going to be a lot of tips in that video. And because I'm linking you to a longer video, I'm putting a little bit more of the emphasis on this video to explain these concepts, because I think this guy really knows what he's talking about and seems to do a really good job and put a lot of effort into explaining this all succinctly in a way that I think you could understand. I'm going to be able to keep my video shorter, so I can just ask you to like and subscribe and say thank you for all that, and I'll see you in the next one.